Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And every Friday on this channel, I do a series called Dear Peter, which is where I respond to emails that you guys send me asking for some advice just based on my own personal life experience or mistakes that I've made, things I've learned in my own life. It is not professional or expert advice by any means. It's just me sharing some stories with you to maybe help out a little bit. And I was reading through the emails, and I noticed a common theme through a lot of the emails recently is people asking about relationship advice. And I think it's because I talk so much on, my videos about my husband and I being in marriage counseling, and I'm a huge supporter of marriage counseling. It has taught us how to communicate better. It has taught us how to, the different forms of intimacy, whether it's, spiritual and intellectual intimacy or physical intimacy. We've learned a lot, in marriage counseling. And I really, really believe that anybody can benefit from it, no matter how great or horrible your marriage or relationship is. So I think that's why I get a lot of questions about relationships. But as I was reading these emails where people were saying things to me, about, like, I just recently went through a separation or a breakup and I'm really struggling, and, it's because this person wanted me to change, or that person didn't want to change, or, like, I'm in a relationship and I'm not getting my needs met, or my husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, like, they won't change this for me, they're always wanting to do this, or this is their interest and I don't relate, or whatever. And it's this whole idea of wanting someone to change. And I think any of us that have been in a relationship, I've been in 3 long-term relationships, and I think any of us, having been in a relationship, has that moment where we're like, if this person could just do this or change this way. I know it's kind of a funny conversation between my husband and I now, because there are things that, I love YouTube. I have 4 channels on YouTube, all that kind of stuff. He has no interest in YouTube whatsoever. He doesn't watch videos. He doesn't watch my videos. He could care less, right? Sometimes he's in my vlog, sometimes he's, courteous enough to be in my vlog, but he doesn't really enjoy YouTube. And I love electronic dance music, but I have 1 or 2 music festivals that I like to go to. Other than that, that's his thing. Well, there was a long time that I think that we felt this need to be constantly involved in the other person's thing, and that forced us to kind of, well, if you just didn't like to go to music festivals so much, or if you weren't constantly doing this with YouTube, and what we realized was it's not really about changing the other person, it's about accepting them where they're at and loving them for who they are. I'm not talking in this video today, okay, about issues like addiction. And I'm not talking in here about issues like hurtful behavior or, any kind of like abuse whatsoever. I'm talking more about like personality traits or interests, those kinds of things. But it made me think back to probably the wisest piece of advice that I was ever given about relationships. And it didn't come from my counselor. It did not come from any book. It didn't come from any seminar or YouTube video. It came from a friend of mine, probably, 7 or 8 years ago, and she was going through relationship counseling at the time, and we were just kind of hanging out, and I said, what is like one piece of advice that you have learned that was super, valid, that's really, been a life changer for you in this relationship? And she said the 90-10 rule. And I was thinking about this also because yesterday I was talking about, that life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% the way that we react to it. And I've always thought that, percentages are interesting. I like to use measurable goals when I, set goals for myself and things like that. But as I was, thinking about that yesterday, I thought back on what she said today. And then as I was reading these emails, it just kept on going back to the 90-10 rule, the 90-10 rule, the 90-10 rule. And I remember when she told me this, because I thought back on my past 2 relationships, right? And I said, well, what is the 90-10 rule? And she said, the 90-10 rule is that in almost every relationship, and I don't know that there's any statistical research to this, okay? I'm sure there isn't. This is probably just something that came up in a, counseling session with her. But I thought it was so profound when she told me, like, it stuck with me all this time. And she said the 90-10 rule is when you're in a relationship and you're getting, 80 to 90% of what you want, but there's 10 to 20% of what you aren't getting, and you are, constantly trying to get that 10 or 20%. So instead of focusing on the 80 to 90% that you are getting in a relationship, you're focusing on the 10 to 20% that you aren't. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was thinking back, on my past relationships, and even at that time I was with Alex, my relationship with Alex, and, all of the things that I got as a result, but all of the things that I wasn't getting. And one of the things I've talked a lot about on my vlog is interesting that, you know, in my past 2 relationships, I'm a homebody. Anybody that knows me knows that. I like to sit at home. I like to be with my dogs. I like to be around, you know? And when I first met Alex, we were like going out all the time, and I enjoyed it, but it was kind of, I would say, you know, just a shift for me. I wasn't used to it. And I can remember thinking to myself, if he just didn't want to go out so much, like, you know, I would be more into this. And, you know, it was interesting because over time what has happened is I have like done more of the things that he wants to do, and he's done more of the things that I wanted to do, and now he's kind of a homebody sometimes too. So it's like we've kind of like 50-50'd, I would say, our roles in this relationship, and it's the first time that I've been in that kind of relationship where I feel like the other person has not necessarily changed, but we've become different people over the course of a relationship. And so I am getting what I want out of this relationship. And I think you have to sometimes kind of wait and see, you know? I do go to music festivals now. He does sit at home and watch movies, and he does it because he enjoys it, and I do it because I enjoy it. I go to music festivals because I enjoy it. We're planning a trip to Vegas right now, and we're talking about DJs that we want to go see while we're out there, you know? And so that is something that I get very excited about in a way that I wouldn't before. And I think that what is so true about this 90-10 rule is, what she said after that, she said, we're in relationships, and you know, we're with somebody where we're getting all of this that we want, but we're focusing on what we're not getting. So a lot of times we sabotage or leave relationships to go look for that 10%. But what happens is, in your next relationship, you get that 10%, okay? And you'll get 80% or 70% plus that, right, of what you're looking for. But there will always be 10 to 20% of what's missing. You're always going to have something that you didn't have. So your next relationship, right, you might have this. Like I might, in my next relationship, let's say if Alex and I don't make it, 10 years, we're going to make it, okay? We've been around for a while now. But let's say if we didn't, in my next relationship, you know, like I might get somebody that wants to go to music festivals like I do, and also wants to sit at home, but then, you know, like they might not have any interest in the kind of music that I like. So then I want, you know what I mean? Like that's just a stupid example. But I think we're constantly always looking for what we don't get. And I think it is also very much an addict, alcoholic kind of response to the world, as the glass is half empty and you know, instead of half full. And that's where I talk so much on here about gratitude. Years ago, Alex and I, the year that we got married, so this is 7 years ago right now, we were doing this. I had seen this like Oprah, where she talked on there about a couple. She had the couple on there, and they like every day would do a gratitude list for each other, and they would write 3 things down that they really appreciated about that person for that day. They weren't things like that, you know, like, oh, I just love that you love me, or I love that you're my, they weren't like blanket statement things like that. They were very specific things that when you looked at them, you know, you could, like things like taking out the trash, you know, texting me nice things throughout the day. But what it did for them was it helped them appreciate each other more. And then at the end of the day, they would read them out loud to the other person. Well, Alex and I started doing that, and it profoundly changed our relationship. You know, we did it, I think, for 6 months. I think we need to start doing that again. That was like one of the best things that we've ever done in our, you know, relationship and our marriage. Like, well, that was right before we got married. But that was like one of the greatest things we've ever done, because at the end of the day, it forced us to connect and really speak to the other person, you know? Have you ever seen these videos on YouTube where they'll have people talk to the other person, like straight, they film it, and then they have to look in each other's eyes while they say things? Those are like some of the exercises that we've done in marriage counseling that have been really, really powerful, you know? And so I think at the end of the day, to look at the other person and tell them what you appreciate about them or what you're grateful for in them, I think is really profound, you know? I think it really helps the relationship strengthen. And then I think it also goes back to making you look at what you do appreciate about that person in the relationship, what you are getting from them, instead of looking at what you're not getting about them. Because I have friends of mine, you know, that constantly bitch and moan about their partners or their boyfriends or girlfriends, you know, and they're like, if she this, if she that, if she would just do this, and, you know, like, listen, we all do that to some degree, okay? There's not any of us out there that don't do that. I think, you know, part of our language today is bitching about our partner, and I'm sure my husband does it about me, and I do it about him from time to time, but, you know, like, I don't think that's really what we want in a marriage or a relationship. But do we really want that person to change? I don't think so, because I think that the person that we meet, that we get attracted to, is who we fall in love with. So we don't really want them to change, right? So there might be 10 or 20% of things that we're looking for that we want to see in them, you know? And I get a lot of people that contact me and they're like, you know, if my husband did this, or if my husband or wife did this, or, you know, if she shopped less, or, you know, if he had better money management, things like that. A lot of times people contact me about money. I've talked a lot about that on my vlog because Alex and I getting together, like, that was something that we were like, we're never letting money come in the way of our relationship. But, you know, I think the whole 90-10 rule is very, very important to look at. If you're in a relationship and you're saying to yourself, I'm not getting this, I'm not getting this, I'm not getting this, the question you might ask yourself instead, okay, is what am I getting? What does my partner do for me? What is so valuable about that person? And I think that what it will make you realize is that you're with them for a reason. Like, you know, there's a lot they do for you. I remember, you know, years ago with my ex, I was talking to my mom and I was saying, oh, this and that. And she looked at me and she said, weeds grow fast in a garden. And before you know it, they've taken over. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, if you only focus on the negative in a garden, it takes over. And before long, you can't see the flowers anymore. All you can see is the weeds. I choose to be in a relationship today where I see the flowers. I don't choose to be in a relationship where I see the weeds, you know? And my husband, he sees the flowers as well. And so when we both see the relationship that way, then it's a beautiful relationship. We don't want to be in a relationship where we're just constantly negative and, you know, dogging the other person and being down. Like, that's no relationship to be in. So I'm constantly reminded of this 90-10 rule, right? That, yeah, I can leave and I can find somebody else, but why would I when I'm getting so much right now? And I think that's where you fall in love with your partner over and over and over again. It's not about staying in love with the same person for the next 20, 30 years in your life, because people change. People are going to become, like, just like I said, you know, Alex and I have changed in the course of 10 years together. People are going to change. And so I think what it is growing and falling in love over and over again with that person. I've read a lot of books and seen a lot of videos about how marriages begin and end throughout the course of one marriage. And what that means is, the relationship that I'm in right now is not the relationship that I was in day one, you know, 10 years ago. And I appreciate that today, and I'm glad that it's grown and changed. And we've had some growing pains, of course, you know, but I think that you have to constantly learn as you grow from the other person, as well as appreciate what you really love about that person and what you're getting in that relationship, and not focus on the 10%. The 10% will drive all of us crazy. So I hope that helps you guys the way that it helped me years ago. It sticks in my mind all the time, you know? Like, sometimes when we're in a fight, I'll be like, the 10%, you know? Anyway, and really at the end of the day, you know, if he doesn't take out the trash and I have to, or if I forget to feed the dogs and he has to, is it really that big of a deal? No, it's not. And do not start huge fights, especially on this weekend. It's the weekend, enjoy it. Don't start huge fights with your partner on little stupid stuff like that. It's just not that big of a deal, okay? The bigger picture is the relationship. The smaller picture is those details. And if you focus on that, then what happens over time is you start having these arguments that start with the trash, right? And before you know it, you're yelling at each other. And this is like why marriage counseling was so good for us. You start and you're like going at each other, and before you know it, you're not having the argument is having you. You know what I mean? And when you look back, you go, well, where did this argument start? I want to stop it, but where did it start? You can't even remember. It was about the trash. So just take out the trash. Just feed the dogs. It's not that deep, you know? Be the partner you want to be, or be the partner you want to have, if that makes sense. And I think that if all of us in relationships was the partner that we wanted, we would have much greater marriages than we do. And that's one thing that, you know, like we talk about regularly, Alex and I, is like, well, what do you need from me? That's a question that we hear a lot in our home. It's like, well, what do you need from me right now? What can I do for you? What can I make this situation easier? Things like that. And then it also makes you feel like you're part of a team. You know what I mean? Anyway, I love you guys, and I hope that was helpful to you. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. Do not fight with your partner this weekend. Make love, dance, listen to music, have a good brunch on Sunday. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.